Okay, so today we're diving into something that, well, it just doesn't seem to add up. We're talking about the relationship between Turkey and Israel, where on one hand you have these really strong political statements, but on the other, the trade numbers tell a totally different story. It's a real puzzle.
And that brings us to the big question, right? How can a country be one of Israel's loudest, maybe even its fiercest critic on the world stage, and at the exact same time, be one of its most important economic suppliers? I mean, it's a huge contradiction. It really makes you wonder what is actually happening behind the scenes.
And this right here, this is the core of it. You've got the official story, the big headline from May 2024, Turkey halts all trade with Israel. Pretty clear, right? But then you look at the actual UN data, and it says Turkey was still Israel's fifth largest supplier this year. So wait a minute. How do you square that circle? How can both of those things be true? Well, let's dig.
To really get what's going on now, we've got to rewind a little. Because before all the recent turmoil, the economic link between these two countries wasn't just some small-time deal. We're talking about a massive, deep-rooted partnership. Just get a load of this number. $35.7 billion. That's the value of their trade in just the 5 years leading up to 2023. So yeah, this was no minor connection. This was a gigantic economic relationship.
And to put that into perspective, Turkey wasn't just some random country on the list. It was playing in the big leagues. We're talking about it being Israel's fourth largest trading partner, right up there with giants like the US, China, and Germany. So these economic ties, they weren't just important, they were pretty much essential.
And then, everything changed. After the Hamas attack on October 7th and the start of Israel's military operation in Gaza, the political rulebook was basically thrown out the window.
Almost immediately, Turkey's President Erdogan positioned himself as one of Israel's sharpest critics out there. And this created this massive gap, right, between the harsh words he was saying for his base and the economic reality of a multi-billion-dollar partnership that was still chugging along. It was a real political tightrope.
So things escalated, and they escalated fast. After months of pressure, Turkey finally announced some export restrictions in April of 2024. But then, just a month later, they went all in, declaring a full stop to all trade. So according to the official record, that was it. The partnership was done.
But was it really? Because even with those big announcements, people who track this stuff, journalists, trade analysts, they started noticing some, let's call them cracks in this so-called embargo.
Okay, so here's the first alleged workaround that popped up. It looks like a classic rerouting scheme. On paper, Turkish goods were going somewhere new, but the final destination, well, that seemed to stay the same. And the key country in this new shuffle? Greece.
And check out the data that got everyone talking. In May 2024, yep, the exact same month the full trade halt was announced, Turkish exports to Greece suddenly jumped by 71% from the year before. So you gotta ask, is that just a wild coincidence? Or is it a pretty clear sign that the goods were just taking a little detour?
So how did this allegedly work? Well, according to reports, it's a pretty straightforward three-step play. Step 1, ship the goods from Turkey to a port in Greece. Step 2, this is the sneaky part. The paperwork is allegedly changed to mask where the stuff actually came from. And Step 3, the goods are then shipped out again, from Greece straight to Israel.
But wait, there's more. That Greek route wasn't the only potential loophole people found. There was another alleged channel. This one involved changing the final destination on the paperwork to the Palestinian territories, even though the goods still had to pass through Israeli ports to get there.
423%. Just let that sink in. That is the insane surge in Turkish exports that were suddenly labeled as going to the Palestinian territories. A lot of people watching this said, look, this is just another way to get the same stuff into Israel, you just slap a different label on it.
Okay, but we're not just talking about things like construction materials. The investigation also zeroed in on something way more critical: oil. You know, the fuel that's absolutely vital for any kind of military campaign. Yeah, the accusations got a lot more serious than just consumer goods. One report made a bombshell claim that even this year, in 2024, 10 different shipments of crude oil made their way from Turkey to Israel. The allegation is that Turkish ports and infrastructure were still being used to keep this critical fuel flowing. So why all this intense scrutiny? I mean, why is every single shipment, every dollar being put under a microscope? To get that, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Because this isn't just a trade dispute,
It's all happening in the middle of this huge global reckoning over the conflict in Gaza.
And this is exactly why the stakes are so incredibly high. You have a whole host of major international bodies and rights groups. We're talking the UN's top court, the ICJ, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and even some Israeli human rights groups who've been sounding the alarm. Some have gone as far as to state that what's happening in Gaza fits the definition of genocide. So that's the heavy global context here, and it's why every trade move is being watched so closely.
So where does all this leave us? Well, pretty much in the middle of a tangled web, right? You've got political promises, conflicting economic data, and these incredibly serious international accusations all mixed together. Let's try to pull it all into focus.
When you boil it all down, it comes back to this one central conflict. The political message is crystal clear. Trade with Israel is over. But the economic reality, what the data seems to show, is something else entirely, that the goods allegedly just found a new way to get to their destination.
And that really leaves us with a much bigger question, one that goes way beyond just Turkey and Israel. It makes you wonder, in a world as interconnected as ours, can politics ever truly cut off deep economic ties? Or are those financial interests just so powerful that they'll always find a workaround, a backdoor, a new route? It's definitely something to think about.